talk about what brings her peace and how she's found peace through surviving terminal cancer. She was given a terminal cancer diagnosis and has survived. So join me in welcoming Amanda.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I am so grateful to have you on. So, you've had a very long journey.
I really have, and it's kind of fitting that we're talking today because I'm in Aries. So of course, like this is one of the cardinal signs, and I really feel when they talk about all those years of kind of karmic struggle, I feel that in my soul. Um, so yeah, so it has definitely been a difficult but interesting journey.
So, kind of like walk us through that journey. 2019 was a pivotal moment in your life.
Yes. So even before kind of 2019, I kind of lived a bit of an illusion. So I had my own family practice. I still have a family law practice. I was married to my partner Matt. He had his own kind of subcontracting engineer specialized company. We were both really successful. I think people wanted to be us, right? Like we had a nice house and we went on nice vacations and we laughed so much together. And there were times where we were intensely happy together. But for many years, and in fact, from the time I had met him, Matt had really struggled with addiction and with some pretty extreme kind of mental health issues. And we had tried to kind of get him help at varying degrees of intensity over the years, but nothing really seemed to stick. And we really struggled to get a diagnosis. So in the fall of 2019, I actually had left him, which then we had two children together. So me and the kids had left, and that had kind of ushered in just a few months of just complete and total chaos. Um, as many women in difficult situations find, they're kind of safer in the relationship than they are outside the relationship, and that was certainly my experience with Matt. So we were still kind of seeing each other, even though we were separated because there was no clean break. And in December of 2019, I was at a Toys R Us with my daughter, and she would have been 8 at the time, and my bra strap fell down, and I just slid my hand in to deal with that, and I felt the tumor, and it was just like, what is this? But I'm in the Barbie aisle at Toys R Us, right? So I can't really do anything about it. But the interesting thing is that about 2 months before that, I had been to see a psychic, and the psychic had been very good. Her name's Christy Flynn. She was excellent. And she actually said to me, if you forget everything else I tell you, you need to go see this Reiki master named Pam Allen LeBlanc. And you need to take her first available appointment, and you cannot cancel it. Well, it turns out that first available appointment was actually about 12 hours after I found my tumor. And so my cancer journey and my Reiki journey, they started literally the same day. And so I was diagnosed with breast cancer in December of 2019. I had a mastectomy in February. And in April of 2020, April 2nd, I found out that it had spread to my bones and it had been more aggressive than they initially thought. So I was 37 at the time, and it was just actually 36. I turned 37 about 2 weeks after I was diagnosed, terminal. And so yeah, so it's kind of been a roller coaster since then. They didn't think I would last very long. It was very aggressive, and breast cancer under in women under 40 tends to be very lethal, um, pretty quickly. And so I originally had said, do you think I could live 10 years? And they had said, like, there's just no chance. Um, and I later found out in August of that year, I found out that they actually thought I would die by the summer, that they really, there was just no hope for me. And so that's kind of where I started in 2020. And I really got focused on just, you know, whether I kind of decided that whether I was going to live 3 months or 30 years or 50 years, I was going to focus on building the life that I wanted, however long I had. And I decided I was going to focus on healing in a way that I had never really thought about before. I was going to put myself first. I'm kind of the classic oldest daughter, right? I put everybody else first. I look after everybody. Um, and it was actually, when I went to start this process, I realized I didn't know what brought me joy because I never really prioritized it. I knew what brought everybody I loved joy, and I knew it made me happy to bring them joy. But as far as what brought Amanda McCordic joy, it's just nothing I had ever turned my mind to because it seemed so insignificant to me. Um, so I got really serious about healing my body, healing, the harmful thoughts I had. I was very critical of myself, and I always told myself that, that critic in my head was what was driving me to do more, driving me to be successful. But really, it was just a bully, right? Because it
Yes.
did, it didn't matter how much I did. It was never enough. There was always somebody more successful who worked harder. There was always somebody who was better than me, and it didn't matter what I did. My brain was always quick to point out, yeah, but there's somebody better than you. So, keep moving. Um, so it started a really beautiful process. I'm incredibly thankful for the terminal diagnosis because it really, I always said that like the cancer diagnosis in and of itself wasn't enough. It had to be terminal for me to really pay attention. And I did. And I started spending a lot of time in the energy. So I started taking classes. Um, that summer, I had radiation, the summer of 2020. It completely zapped me. And I was a workaholic. So I didn't know what to do if I couldn't work. And I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't read. Um, Something they don't tell you, but when you're going through cancer treatments, you really can't read. Your brain can't hold the information long enough. And so I had this highly analytical mind that was used to working, massive hours. All of a sudden, all I could do was lay in a hammock in my backyard. And so I started listening to Reiki meditations on repeat for hours and hours and hours. And attunements I had received, I'd listen to those over and over again. And it started really changing the dynamics of my life. Me and my partner Matt had reconciled when I got cancer. He had been my rock for about the first 3 or 4 or 5 months. But he fell into old patterns. So as I kind of was finding this new zest for life, and discovering myself and discovering joy, I was watching him conversely kind of backslide or slide kind of into just real depression and darkness. Um, yeah, we were really concerned about his health. He didn't look good. We had gotten family pictures done because we thought I was dying. And I remember when I got the pictures, my first thought was, "Is I don't look like I'm dying, but he does."
Oh, wow.
And he did. And so we, I had held Matt together for many, many years. I had guilted him into living. I had used every trick in the book to keep that man alive. And when I faced my own terminal diagnosis, I had said to him, I won't do harsh chemo. Like, I don't want to be alive just for the sake of being alive. Like, if I don't have quality of living, then I'm not interested. And he had cried and said, I would never want you to suffer. As much as I hate the thoughts of you being gone, I hate more the thoughts of you being here suffering. And there was this moment where there was this clarity between us, where it was very clear that that's exactly what I had asked him to do for years. And it was, it almost knocked me over, this sudden realization that that is exactly what I'm doing. And so I percolated on that for about 3 or 4 months, and maybe longer, actually. It was a real shock to my system. But we had a conversation in January of 2021 where I said to him, it's your life, and I love you, and I want you to tackle your mental illness just like we tackled the cancer. I want us to
Right.
pull out all the stops. I want you to meditate. I want you to eat well. I want you, and he just kind of said he wasn't interested, that he felt that he had accomplished all he was supposed to in life, and that it was my time, and that he needed to get out of the way. And I'm a problem solver, so I never really believed that he would commit suicide. I always thought in the end that he was a fighter and he would find a way. But I was wrong. So in March of 2021, just a few days, actually short of the 1 year anniversary of my terminal diagnosis, I found him with a gunshot wound to the head in our bed. And he was still alive, which is a fear he had actually voiced many times, that he was afraid that would happen. And so it started just the absolute most horrific kind of moment in my life. I don't remember leaving the room. I remember leaning against the kind of French doors and trying to get my hands to work, and they wouldn't. But yeah, so that was in the end of March 2021. And so thankfully I'd had about a year of kind of really intense Reiki training and work, and because otherwise I don't think I would have got through that. Because they had warned me my cancer had stabilized really well the year before, and in fact they couldn't find any signs of cancer in me in November of 2020. And they had told me that if something stressful happened in my life, it could come back and spread through me.
Yeah.
And so I remember thinking, like, there's nothing more stressful. I can't think of anything that's more stressful than this.
And this, I was like, what is this?
Yeah, right? But luckily I was so exhausted by grief. They also don't tell you how tired you are with grief. Like, grief is just exhausting.
It is exhausting.
It is. It's more exhausting than cancer. And so I did the same thing I did with the radiation exhaustion. I laid in a hammock and I listened to meditations on repeat, and I cried and I screamed. I was angry, I was sad, I was regretful, I was hopeful, I was relieved. I was all of these emotions at once. And thankfully, because of the year I'd had before, I didn't criticize myself. I let myself feel the emotion. And I had this little trick where I started deciding that I was going to treat myself like little Mandy, like the little version of me. And I was going to ask her questions about why do you feel that way? Or why do you think that? Why do you think it was your job to keep him alive? Is it anyone's job to keep you alive? Like just those gentle questions. And I would actually pause and listen for the answer. And it was incredibly powerful. I made a point during my time with Matt. We hid so much from people. People had no idea kind of the level of just pure chaos there was at times. And I decided when I got diagnosed terminal that I was done hiding. I was done lying. I was going to live my truth. And if it was something I was embarrassed about, then I was going to change it. So I remember going the day Matt shot himself. I remember going back into our bedroom after they had taken him out. And I thought, I'm not pushing this down. I'm going to observe this room calmly. I'm going to take time. I'm going to clear it energetically. But I'm going to take time in this room. And I'm thankful I did. I had said to Matt when he was never conscious again after he shot himself. But I had sat and held his hand and said that it was okay for him to leave, that my grampy would be there waiting for him. My grampy was my favorite person ever. And when I went and looked in the room, right beside where his body had been was my grampy's obituary. I don't know where he found it, there was other little things like that where it was just, he had collected all the crystals in the house and wrapped them in a blanket and kind of hid them away because he didn't want the crystals to absorb any of his negative energy. He didn't really believe in any of that stuff, but he knew that I did.
So he was very conscious of what he was doing.
He was in that moment in a way that that was out of character for him. And so it in in the summer of 2021, after that first summer without him, it was just this massive soul growth summer. Um, and during that, I kept being reminded of how lucky, how absolutely fortunate I was to have started this journey with Reiki, because I wouldn't have survived it. My body wouldn't have been calm enough to be in a position to heal. I wouldn't have been able to get through the situation with Matt and the loss of that, because it was just immense. We've been together 17 years when he died. I barely knew how to be an adult without him. I grew up with him. um, so yeah, and I thought about all the times that I had really spiraled, and I wish that I'd had more Reiki. I have a wonderful Reiki lady, but she's really busy. And so she's about a 3 week book out. You have to book about 3 weeks out to see her. And I thought about all the days where I wish that I had had the ability just to book a session,
Yeah.
right? And then I got thinking about, people who live in remote areas, or people who work shift work like nurses, or people who don't have babysitters. And I thought about all these people who Reiki was really hard to access. And then I thought about all these wonderful Reiki masters I had met through the various courses and workshops and conferences I had attended. And so many of them, crazy powerful, lovely souls, but they don't go out there and offer their services because of various hurdles. They just feel overwhelmed with the paperwork. They're not sure where to start. They have full-time jobs, they have kids. And so I thought, like, I want to do what I can to help those people share their light. And so I really started feeling called to create, like, the universe was kind of like, that's your job. Like, that's why you're here. And yeah, so I spent several months arguing with the energy.
Don't you love that? You still lose, but
I do. Well, I was like, oh, I'm not technologically gifted at all. Like, I realize how old I am now, because I have to get my 13-year-old to help me. Um, and so I kept saying to the universe, like, oh, I'll do anything you want, universe. You say all the time, like, I surrender. But I don't think you really want me doing that. I'm sure there is somebody better. Um, but it was very clear. And so that's I created Dragonfly Reiki Marketplace at the bequest and insistence of the universe.
well, if you were called to it, we know this. If you were called to it and you're sitting there fighting with the energy, I have fought with the energy many times myself. I've fought with the universe many times and lost every time.
Hmm.
So the universe is, I don't know how many in O. I am, they always win, and that's fine because um, as we know, it's like if you lean into it, if you stop resisting, it unfolds nicely.
Well, and it's true, So we always say that when lessons aren't learned, they're repeated.
Yeah.
And so after the intense summer of 2021, I actually, to everyone's shock, mostly mine, I actually met a new partner. I had swore I would never get married again. I fell just head over heels. Um, and in fact, in my last conversation with Matt, he had said, I'm going to send you somebody. And I had said, oh no, I'll never, no, thank you. I'm good. And he said, I'm going to send you somebody, and he's going to be so good, you're not going to be able to say no. And that's really exactly what happened. But I fell into old habits, and I started working too much. I have other businesses, and I was really focused on all those businesses, and the cancer came back. And so the cancer came back in June of 2024. This past summer, I could barely walk. Some days I couldn't walk. I had to have help getting in and out of bed. I had to go up and down the stairs on my bum. Um, I didn't learn my lesson. I went back to many of the things that had made me sick, including working too much. And yeah, it came back. So I didn't know what was going to happen with Dragonfly. The Dragonfly process had been so much harder than I had expected. Um, it had taken, twice as long as I thought it would. And so I really was just trying to get kind of shifted over to focus on it when I got sick. And I thought, like, that's it. Like, at one point, I really didn't think I would make the summer because I was so sick. And my body was just shutting down. I just didn't have the strength to do anything in my body. But I went back to what I did before, all the stuff I did before. And in about 4 weeks, I was not 100%. I still had some hip issues, but I could walk. I could go up and down the stairs. I could get in and out of bed. I could work again. Um, and now I'm doing great. I'm back to focusing. Yeah, I've stepped away from my other companies, and I really do feel like this was a not so gentle nudge from the universe to force me to drop the things that were no longer for me.
Yeah.
So that I have space and my focus is on what matters, which is dragonfly. So cancer continues to be a powerful tool of good in my life that I'm incredibly thankful for.
And you've accepted the lessons that it has given, which is amazing because some people would see it not as a lesson and not as a blessing, but you see and are aware of what's happening.
Yeah.
So
No,
grace
it's
and gratitude.
it's a huge my mom really struggled with all of this, of course, right? And especially she struggled initially, I think, with I got my head around death pretty quickly and decided, like, if I was going to heal, I couldn't be scared of it because I know that a body that is in fear is in fight or flight, and you don't heal in fight or flight. And so I had to face this fear of death. And so I sat with it, I processed it, and I let it go. And so after that, I kind of said that I'm kind of neutral on it. I don't want to die at all. I have all kinds of things I want to do, but I accept that I may. Well, I mean, I certainly will someday, but I accept that it may be sooner rather than later. And that doesn't change anything for me. It really doesn't. My mom said to me, if you could only live 5 years of your new life or 50 years of your old life, which would you pick? And I was like, I would pick 1 year of my new life over 50 years of my old life. I have no interest in my old life. It wasn't comfortable. It was painful. It was hard. It was lonely. Um, and that new life, it came because of my cancer diagnosis. So it was worth it. It was worth it 1,000 times over. And I say that knowing that I may not live very long. Uh, yeah. So originally they had said the best case scenario was 3 to 5 years. And then in August of this year, my doctor again said, your best you're looking at is 3 to 5 years. And I said, from now or from 4.5 years ago? And she
Yeah.
said, from now. So, I kind of got a little bit of chuckle because I'm almost 5 years in. And, my goal was originally 10 years, and they told me it wasn't possible. Well, now that's in reach with 3 to 5. So I'm just going to keep going 3 to 5 years at a time. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
So of through all of this, you've come to terms and peace with what may or may not happen. So in finding that kind of peace, how do you define peace personally for yourself?
I think peace for me is just like a quiet knowing that even if I don't understand how the pieces all fit together in this exact moment, that it is for a reason. And I'm a pretty logical thinker. I think it's probably the law training. And so if I logically know that this all fits together for my highest good, then none of this is happening to me. It's all happening for me. And if it's all happening for me, there's no reason to have anything but peace. And so I think for me, it's just that quiet knowing that there's no bad days, there's challenging days. There's days of intense soul growth. And like when I see somebody now that when I see, for instance, somebody who's homeless, or a woman maybe in my legal practice who has gone through a lot of abuse, I used to think, oh, that poor soul. Now I think, what an ambitious soul. Like, look how ambitious they've been in this life. Look at the big experiences they're tackling in this life. And it shifts it from this poor them to this admiration. And for me, like, it all fits into that piece, right? Like, it used to be, I'd see somebody who was homeless and it would cause me a lot of stress. I'd feel guilty. I'd feel worried for them. And I'd feel almost like parentified, like I was responsible for them, which
Right.
really just made me feel better, made me feel important, and elevated me above them. Now I see them and I think, wow, you're so ambitious. And it's not that I, won't give them some money or won't be kind to them, but it's just I don't pity them anymore. I respect the experience that they're here having, and that brings me peace.
Beautiful. And so, what are some of the things that you do to bring peace into your life? How do you find that peaceful moment or moments throughout the day?
Yeah, so obviously Reiki is huge for me. I am a Karuna Holy Fire Reiki Master. Um, so it's kind of like that the ad for Frank's hot sauce. I put Reiki on
And
everything.
everything?
Yeah, on everything. So I Reiki everything, including parking spots. Parking is I get the best parking spots. Um, Speeding tickets. I haven't been caught speeding in forever. But no, I Reiki everything. So, and I stop and I listen. So I listen to the energy inside of me. I'm working on developing my intuition. Um, but it's paying attention to the energy inside of me, because for so long I suppressed every natural instinct I had that was working for my survival, because it was always about everybody else. So now it's when I feel something in my energy, in my body, I stop, and again, it's that I talk to little Mandy. Okay, why are you feeling that way? What's, instead of just bottling it down. I'm really fortunate that my new partner, he is a talker. So if he feels something or he sees something in me because I have a terrible poker face at home, um,
I
we talk
understand that.
about it. We talk about it right away. Um, but yeah, I bring Reiki into everything, and especially I have about 200 acres of beautiful forest along a river, um, with beautiful trails through it, and I go there a lot, more so in my mind than in person. But I've spent time setting up a beautiful place inside of me, so that if I'm sitting in traffic, I go there. If I'm not feeling well, I go there. If I'm stressed, I take a break and I go there. I ground myself. And I do it from a perspective, for years, as part of the law practice culture, it's there's never enough time. We're always too busy. So, I really was comfortable with the whole abundance mentality for money, but I wasn't for time. I always felt like there wasn't enough time. And when I feel that creeping in now, I remind myself there is enough time. Trust the divine timing. And it doesn't matter how hard I struggle to push something uphill. If it's not supposed to happen that day, it's not going to happen that day. But if I wait to the day it's supposed to happen, it's going to roll right down the hill the way it's supposed to. So stop struggling and go sit in the forest for a little bit.
Right. Nobody likes to feel like Sisyphus. Nobody.
Exactly. Exactly.
And as you're finding peace within yourself and bringing yourself that peace, how do you bring peace to others?
So, one of my favorite sayings is healing is contagious. And so I tell people, if you want to heal your children, if you want to heal your parents, if you want to heal your spouse, focus on healing yourself, because really all you can be is an example for them. So you can show them you can model how to heal, but each person has to kind of take up ownership of their own healing journey. And you can get out of their way. I realized, as part of my cancer journey and learning to love myself, that I ran around and I buffered everybody that I loved from the natural consequences of their actions, which resulted in developmental delays of their souls because I was busy running around making their ruts super comfortable. And so I think that's one of the biggest things I did for the people I loved is I stopped putting myself above them. I stopped being a martyr. I stopped thinking that I had broader, stronger shoulders than them. And I got out of their way. So I love them and I support them, but I don't judge them. I don't give them advice unless I'm specifically asked. And I don't try to think about the things I think they're doing wrong. They get to live their life the way they laid out in their journey, their planning of this life. And it's not mine to say, right? I used to think I don't know what my purpose is or what I'm doing here. So how can I judge how somebody else is doing on their
On
like
their journey.
on their
Yeah.
journey? How I would have no idea. So, and then of course the big thing is Dragonfly Reiki Marketplace. Um, my dream was to make a place where you could easily, consistently, and quickly secure a Reiki session, whether you wanted it same day, whether you wanted it at a weird hour, whatever the situation. I wanted to make Reiki available when and where it was needed. And we've been able to do that. I've just been thrilled with the uptake among the Reiki masters. We put the call out and they really answered it. We have over 50 vetted and verified Reiki masters from all different lineages and walks from life on the platform now in the community, and we have about another 150 that are in the process of finalizing. So it's been fantastic. We've built this community, and now we're there to serve people who need Reiki whenever they need it. And because we literally have practitioners across the world, there's always a Reiki session available. You want to do Reiki at 2 a.m. because your kids are asleep then? We got a practitioner for you. So we're really excited and really proud. And I always, from the time I was little, I've always wanted to lead everything I found better than what I found it. And that's kind of like, as I live out my days, again, whether that's 3 years or 30, that's I want to leave this place better than when I found it. And I really feel that Dragonfly is my way of doing that.
And as you're helping people and introducing people to Reiki more and more through not just the marketplace, but the people you touch and come in contact with, um, we're going to go back to the law practice for a second. I know you're not doing that too much, but let's drift back there for 2 seconds,
Yeah.
because the question I like to ask next is what's in your toolbox? So you have a client sitting before you and they are stressed out, whether it's getting ready for court, you're prepping them for court, or you're prepping them to have to face an abuser in court, in person, and we know what that is like. That's
Yeah.
a that's beyond stressful. It's like nobody wants to do it, and yet here we are. So the what's in your toolbox is how do you help them find peace while they're sitting at your desk, and ease them into finding that nice inner balance within themselves.
Yeah. So it actually, after Matt died, I debated. Uh, I didn't know what I was going to do if I had the stomach to go back and do that kind of hardcore litigation work that I had been doing. Um, and then a dear friend of mine kind of came to me, and she had just gotten her Reiki masters, and she's kind of said to me, like, I can't do my job anymore. I feel like I've got to quit, but I don't know where I'm going. And I just kept getting, go talk to Amanda. And it was like everything in my mind aligned. And I said, you're how I'm going to do law. And she said, what? I said, you are how I'm going to do law. And so I decided that if I was going to go back and do it, I had to make sure that I was managing my stress levels because of the cancer diagnosis. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. And then all of a sudden, I had this Reiki master who also had some administrative assistance experience. And so I hired her for my law firm, and we fully incorporated Reiki into our practice. So we use Reiki for our lawyers. I have two junior lawyers and our support staff because it's stressful for them. I tell them all the time, we don't want you getting cancer. We're going to deal with your stress before you get cancer. She works with a staff. We put symbols. We've actually, all of our staff have at least a level 1 and 2. Half of them have a master's. So we put symbols in all of the evidence books and in all of our pleadings. We send Reiki to them. But the big thing is we have a Reiki room at our firm, right in our office, and any client that comes in and opens a file gets a free Reiki session. And the reason for that is I always say it's easier for people to experience Reiki than it is for me just to explain it.
Absolutely
And once you
100%
feel it,
agree.
you know, right? Once you feel it, you know. And so so the first one is free, and then we also we've used it very effectively to help people prepare for discovery, where they're going to be cross-examined, and a strong discovery, can end to settlement. So it's just a huge tool. Um, for settlement conferences. So that's where we sit down with the other side and try to come with a judge and try to come up with an agreement. So we do it before so that people are calm, they're open, they're not dragging a bunch of angry energy in with them. They're operating from a place of love. We talk to people about letting go of the past so they can, don't fight over the scraps of your own life, focus on building your new life. So we've used that really effectively, and testimony. Actually, I've seen clients who I really worried how they were going to testify because of nerves and just some of the pain they had experienced. Um, there's nothing that I have done that has been as effective as have them have Reiki just before they go on. Uh, I could prep them for a week and it wouldn't be as effective because they're calm, they're clear, they're not panicked. And even when the trial doesn't necessarily go the way they want, it's still a different experience because they were heard and they were able to clearly express what they were carrying inside. And that in and of itself can be really therapeutic. So yeah, so Reiki literally I put it into everything, including my law firm.
That's amazing because most people, that's a very stressful profession, and it's not one where you would associate it with
No, yeah,
with Reiki.
lawyers have the second, as far as professions go, the second highest suicide rates, the highest addiction rates, the highest infidelity rates, the highest divorce rates. um, if you look around, like where I live, for instance, it's a pretty small town or a pretty small city. um, there's not very many family lawyers above the age of 60. They've all either died of heart attacks, strokes, or cancer. It takes an incredible toll. And so, and that's why I really struggled about the thoughts of going back to law, because I knew it was part of what was making me sick. And so Charlene really came in to help me navigate that. And more importantly, my junior lawyers, they are just at the start of their career. And if we can give them the tools now, it will
Yes.
say, yeah, it will. I'm hoping it will save them cancer. um, but it's been wonderful to see, and even the people, a lot of times, people have their free session and then they don't go back and do it again. I always think, like, that's okay. We planted a seed,
Hmm.
and we
Absolutely.
we don't know when those seeds. It's not for me to know when that seed's gonna take off, um, but I trust that it will when it's supposed to.
When it's supposed to. Divine timing.
Divine timing.
And it might take another painful lesson. You never know.
Listen, I think I've learned more of my lessons, but I don't delude myself that, there's, healing isn't linear. It's kind of circular, right? You come back and back and back. Um, but I'm leveling up. I know that. So divine
Yes.
timing.
Divine timing. And as you are doing all this beautiful healing work through both the marketplace and through law, what do you feel people in general need to know? I mean, we've got some very high stress professions,
Yeah.
and some of these people that are in these high stress professions don't know how to find peace. So what advice do you have that might help that one person just spark a little bit of peace in their life?
So the first thing I would say is self-care is not optional. It's not a luxury. You can avoid doing it, but you're going to crash and burn. And it's just you're putting it off, and it's almost like credit card debt. The more you ignore it, the bigger and bigger and bigger it gets, and you got to deal with it. And self-care starts with self-love. I remember my Reiki master saying to me, Amanda, your worth isn't tied to how much you produce. You know that, right? And I thought, what a ridiculous thing to say. Of course it is. Right? And I was like, no, that's not true. Of course I'm worth more if I work more, if I produce more, if I and it was I didn't even realize how ingrained in me it was. And she was so good about it. She goes, "Oh, okay. Do you want to hold on to that limiting belief?" Or and I said
I love that.
and I said I do. And she said, "Okay, you can hold on to it if you want. And when you're ready, when you and about 2 weeks later, I was like, I've been thinking about that nonstop, and I think you're right. I think I'm not. I think I'm still worth something if I'm not working. And so, that gets pounded into us, that hyper productivity, that competitiveness, that need to win. Um, I used to think, I literally used to think the reason people paid me so much money is that they would walk into my office and they would hand me this just mess, and they would walk out feeling lighter, and I'd be there holding their mess trying to untangle it. And that's really what I did day in day out, is I took in people's problems and I tried to figure out a way for me to solve them. You can't do that. You can assist, you can guide, but it really needs to come from them, and you can't take on their stuff. You can't take it personal. You can't absorb that. Um, but going back, like that self-love piece, self-care has to start with self-love. And self-love means you make time to care for yourself. And maybe it's Reiki, maybe it's not. For me, Reiki worked because I could do it from my desk. I could do it from my office. So I would do it. I think it was Tuesdays from 1 to 2, I think is what I did it originally. And I quickly realized that 1 hour spot, that 1 hour of the week was my favorite hour, and that I worked better because of it, that I was more involved with, I was more checked in with my family because of it. I had more patience, I had more clarity. It made me a better lawyer. And if I had started earlier, I don't think I would have got cancer. And it certainly, so like it's an investment in your productivity, it's an investment in your career, and it's an investment in yourself. So whether it's Reiki, jogging, whatever it is, find what brings you joy and make sure it's on the to-do list. It's got to be there. Um, because if not, you'll burn out and get cancer.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us today and sharing what brings you peace.
Thank
And
you very
thank you for
much,
sharing
Angie.
your journey on how you got to that point.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on.
Once again, I'm going to put Amanda back. I want to thank everyone who has joined us today on Unique Peace. I want to remind you that every week there is a new episode, and you can always catch up. And if you like what you have heard and seen, please like and subscribe to the Unique Peace Podcast. Thank you and have a great day.